Welcome to this part 3 in our series about our new MCP server for Business Central. This one is on advanced topics. The other videos, you can find links to them down in the description, so make sure that you watch them before this one, or we encourage you to. My name is Kenny Pontoppidan. I'm a program manager in the Business Central team, and with me I have Jens Møller-Petersen.
I'm the engineering manager in the runtime team, and my team is currently building the MCP server for Business Central.
So the prerequisites for this video, if you don't want to watch the other ones, first you need to enable the MCP server. It's currently in public preview, so go to feature management and enable that. And then you also need to kind of know what's behind the default configuration in MCP, as well as named configurations. So that's the prerequisite we expect you to know about for this video.
Yeah, both of these concepts are covered in the other 2 videos. All right, so let's talk a little about what MCP actually does. So you create an agent which talks to Business Central through an MCP connector, which then talks to the MCP server. And currently the MCP server exposes all the built-in APIs for data. You can also add your custom APIs, so your functionality is also available with the preview version of the MCP server.
And right now, when we talk about APIs, we mean API pages. We might open up for API queries in the future, so stay tuned for that.
Yes, so let's take a look at how it looks different when you are running with the default configuration versus when you're running with a name configuration. So here I have opened Copilot Studio and have created an agent with the elegant name of Agent Default because it uses the default configuration. Now, when you connect to Business Central, then it effectively only has these 3 tools available: the action search, describe, and invoke. But it is still able to answer a question like, do I have any customers? Because it looks for an action which can list the customers and hence can find them. Now, if we look at what happens if we specify a configuration, I have another one here where I have created a specific configuration. And when you look at the tool list here, you can now see that there are a number of specific tools in here for listing items, listing inventory postings with the descriptions. So now it does not need to search for the tools first, and it can then find the tools directly by looking into the tool list. However, there is a limit to how many tools you can have, which is why we have introduced the dynamic tools system. Let's go back to the slide where you can see a repeat of the dynamic tools available: the search, describe, and invoke. But let's take a look at how these actually work a little more in detail. So when you're using the dynamic tool mode, then the MCP client will pass keywords to the BC Actions search tool. This will do semantic search to find the top X relevant tools. Based on this list, the language model will then call describe for the tools that it considers using. This action will return the full description of this tool and whatever fields are available. Now, in this case, the tools are API pages, so it'll return the names and types of the fields in your API page. Based on this information, the MCP client, or actually the large language model, calls BC Actions invoke and passing in any filters, and then Business Central will return data from the API page, and it's basically just communicating back and forth using the OData protocol, because in the tool's description, the LLM was instructed to use an OData syntax to filter and find records. Now, you saw earlier that there were some tool descriptions for the API pages when you had the specific configuration. Now, when you list the tools, you will see a name. This name needs to be unique, which is why we have appended the object type and the ID. And then the first part basically states what is this tool doing, in this case, list job queue log entries. And then there is a description of it, and it also includes the about text for an API page. This is what you get in the original list. Then when you call the describe, then it adds extra information about the fields. Each field will have its type, etc. And it also contains the instructions on the OData constructs, which OData parameters you can pass, filter, select, etc. So this is important for the language model to be able to find the right tool, is that you expose the field you want and that you have a good about text. So Kenny, talk us a little through how you can make your APIs even better as tools.
Yeah, because you probably also have custom APIs, and we generate about texts for our API pages, which is interesting, right? About texts came as something that was used in teaching tips. Actually, when you think of teaching tips and about text, this is where you see things in advanced tell me or in the help pane or as teaching tips on pages. But now they are also present on API pages, and API pages have no UI. But we're still using about text, and that's what you can also do, add about title and about text properties to your API objects. This will allow any agent to reason better over what your APIs are able to do.
And normally, as humans, we don't like long, detailed texts. Actually, the LLM doesn't mind that much, so you can be quite specific in your about text for your API pages.
So when should you use which type of tool? So static tools, specific APIs is probably where you have well-defined business processes, where you want to create an agent that is limited to something and you know exactly what this something is. Contrast that to dynamic tools, where the agent is likely more exploratory. It might even be a chat experience. So in that case, maybe you don't want to lock at least exploring data down to something specific, but actually want that broad experience. And as we mentioned in previous videos and in this one, you can either set the dynamic tools like specifically in the default, or you can enable that if you have a number of APIs exposed. You can also enable discoverability for more read-only APIs.
Yes, and when you set this discover additional objects, you remember you're not necessarily making it easier for the language model. You're giving it more choices. So it has a larger probability of getting things wrong. For instance, in the discover additional objects allows it to find all API pages. You may want to limit it to the API v2 APIs, or if you have some APIs you don't really want to be used anymore, you're better off doing a static tool where you remove those APIs.
Now, that leads also to both the confusion, but also the context size. If you have a lot of tools available, that fills up the model's context. And that's also for performance reasons. Maybe you actually want to limit the number of tools so that the model can easily reason and do it faster. And as we have said a number of times, different MCP hosts will have different maximum number of tools supported. Right now, when we record this video, Microsoft Copilot Studio is around 70 tools. That, of course, will likely change in the future. So this is also one of the reasons why we introduced MCP server configurations from the get-go.
Yes. So when you are building your agents, there are a number of things you can do to make your agents more successful. First of all, you need to decide, well, which tools are actually needed. It's not necessarily that more tools are better, even though it can make a nice demo. Look, it can also do this. But in the end, it might end up doing everything not so well. So you can limit the available tools, and you can create good descriptions of tools. Now, it might seem like a big task to have to create descriptions of all your API pages, because you most likely don't have them by now. But this is actually a place where an AI can also help you by feeding in the fields, etc., your documentation. You can actually get an LLM to describe each API page, what it does, and then you can proofread it and add those as about texts.
Maybe, Jens, we should put a sample prompt out on BC Tech.
Yeah, maybe we could do that. To
make it easier, yeah.
At least that's actually how we built the about text, was this two-step process. Get the first draft from a language model, proofread it, and then add it to the metadata. Now also, in this video, we haven't talked that much about the instructions for your agent, because depending on the model, it may be good at OData constructs or not, or you might want it to guide it towards certain tools. You can do this by adding instructions to your agent. This is particularly useful for either the generic instructions. There are some clients that have a hard time remembering it. You pass back the forward link or the E tag when reading more data or when modifying data. So usually when things don't work, try tweaking with instructions. If that doesn't work, then maybe your tool's descriptions aren't good enough and you want to update those. And then we have experienced that the quality you get depends a lot on the model you use. That there is a difference between the 4.1 model, the 5 model, etc. So I highly encourage you to experiment with the models and find a good trade-off between the complexity of the model and the quality of answers.
And the costs and the performance as well.
Yes.
Right? It might be that you can go with a small language model for some things. That's going to be cheaper and faster. And for other types of agent work, you need something that can reason better, which would be more expensive and probably take a longer time to process your requests.
And this is just an example of instructions. Probably not good, but very often you would define the role. You might add debug information while you're working on it, having it explain what it tries to do. And you can also use it to mitigate frequent issues. For instance, here, avoid putting $ in front of parameters and filters. But actually what we are doing as a product group is that we're monitoring the standard things that LLMs get wrong when you try it against Business Central. And we try to make the connector and basically the MCP server lenient towards those. So for instance, this avoid putting $ in front of parameters and filters is actually no longer needed as an instruction, because we are actually trying on the back end with a $ and without.
Right. So the last thing in the video is, what if you want to have other MCP hosts? Copilot Studio is the product where we started the journey with MCP server for Business Central. But we also know that there are other hosts out there, and maybe you want to run things in VS Code or other products. So right now, and this is going to change in the future, but right now you need to do some more setup. Basically, you need to set up a proxy for the routing of requests and also for the authentication. And right now, this is shipped as a sample code on BC Tech. If you go to aka.ms/BC Tech, you go to the samples and then BC MCP proxy. This is the current sample code for that. And you need to set up that proxy if you want to experiment with other clients. But hopefully all of this will be much simpler in the near future, where we are working on also making sure that other MCP hosts can authenticate and use MCP server.
Yes, we're actively working on this, and we expect to release an update in the near future, which will make the setup much easier and remove the need for the MCP proxy, which is also why it is only a sample. It is not something that we expect to be a long-term part of our Business Central product.
It's not a part of the product. It's a sample.
It's not, exactly.
Yes.
It's delivered as is.
Yeah. All right. So to wrap up, the vision haven't even changed from video 1 and video 2. It's still the same.
That's a new thing for AI, that things don't change within half an hour.
Yes. Make all functionality available in Business Central, functionally available to AI and agents. And of course, do it in a secure, reliable way. In this video, I think we have gone a lot more into details, what it means with reliability, best practices for MCP server. So that also means the call to action in this video compared to the other two, everything is now in black.
And if we'd had 5 videos, we wouldn't be able to fit it in one screen.
True, that is true. So call to action is basically all of it. Set up a test tenant, improve your MCP tools, iterate, provide feedback, both on social media. If there's something that you think maybe this is not working right now in the public preview, engage with us on Viva Engage. And if you want to know how to do that, this is just the final parts. There is an AKA link, the middle one, aka.ms/BC Yammer. This is where you sign up for Viva Engage. So if you were previously on the Yammer network, make sure that you go there. If you're a partner and were not part of the Yammer network in the past, make sure that you sign up for Viva to be part of this community around Business Central partners. The first video link here, the first link, aka.ms/BC all, is all resources for partners, so go there if you can't find other AKA links. And the third link is also important, aka.ms/BC office hours. We're going to do an office hour on MCP server in the beginning of 2026 in January, so make sure you go to that URL and find the sign up link for the Teams meeting. LinkedIn, make sure you follow the product group here. This is where we publish weekly news on what we're working on and what's coming. And YouTube is where we put videos like this one on Launch Edition and others. Make sure that you follow us there. For now, this journey is over. Part 3 is over. Down here in the description, you find links both to documentation, to the other videos, sample code for MCP server. And with that, we thank you for going all the way to the end on MCP server with Business Central. Thank you so much.
Thank you.